We're going to play g5, kicking the knight away. And once the knight jumps to h5, black thinks he's defending. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to cover 7 chess principles in quick-fire fashion to help you improve your chess. And as always, we have a whole bunch of examples to go through so you can see these principles in action and start applying them to your games immediately. And just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Philip. I'm a 2100 FIDE rated player from New Zealand, and I make these videos to help you improve your chess. So let's get right into it. Principle number 1 is when you have a fianchettoed bishop, especially on your king side, you want to avoid trading it off, because what happens is once that bishop goes, all of the dark squares around your king are extremely weak and it can lead to disaster. So this is the classic example, this is the worst case, so to speak. White here trades off black's dark square bishop, queen h6, and there's way too much pressure on the h-file, so the king's going to drop back. We want to get rid of the knight that's defending that h7 square, so we play knight to d5, attacking the rook and the knight, and if the knight takes, we're just going to checkmate. And if the knight doesn't take, so knight to d5, if the rook drops back instead, we're going to play g5, kicking the knight away. And once the knight jumps to h5, black thinks he's defending the h-file, but the rook takes, g takes, and now mate in 2, knight to e7, king h8, queen f6, checkmate. So try to avoid your dark square bishop, or rather your fianchettoed bishop, getting exchanged, especially when it's on the king side. Principle number 2. In the endgame, rooks belong behind passed pawns. So in this case, white has an extra pawn, and it's a passed pawn. So a passed pawn is essentially a pawn that has no other pawns that can get in the way or stop it from becoming a queen. So essentially, the principle states that white wants to get his rook behind the passed pawn, but also black wants to get his rook behind the passed pawn. If black can get his rook behind the pawn, black's chances of drawing this game increase greatly. However, if black's rook is stuck in front of the pawn, then white's most likely going to win. So in this case, how does white proceed? It's white to move. If white played a5, that's a mistake, because now black can simply play rook to d3, and then after something like a6, the rook comes behind the passed a pawn, and black's chances of drawing are pretty much, this is very much a drawable position for black. So instead of playing a5, white needs to find the move rook to c2 or c3 and c1. Essentially, we're trying to get on our next move the rook to the a file behind the pawn. So rook to a8, rook a2, and now rook to a5 is important because it stops white from moving that pawn forward. But essentially, white's going to play king to f3 and march his king across, and white's the only person who can win in this game. And with the right technique, white will win this game. So punchline is, you want to have your rook behind the passed pawn, whether you're attacking or defending. Principle number 3, and this is another rook-related one. In the middle game, rooks love open files. So in this case, the d-file is open, so white is going to want to play a rook onto the d-file, and likewise, black is going to want to contest with putting a rook on the d-file themselves. Now, here's an extra for experts, because that's a pretty well-known principle. The extra for experts is, let's take a look at this position. There are no open files, but there are 2 semi-open files. So the e-file is white's semi-open file, and the c-file is black's semi-open file. The extra for experts in this case is, instead of playing rook to c8 for black, black is going to play rook to b8. And now, you'll see the idea in a second, rook to e1 for white, b5 for black. And here, black is essentially going to play b4, and b takes c3, and leave white with a backwards pawn on c3. I'll just show you in a few moves. So let's just say white plays a few random moves, like this. Black is going to do this, and suddenly black's created an open file for their rooks. Now, on the other hand, if white took this pawn, knight takes b4, attacking the pawn on a2 and the bishop, white drops the bishop back to maintain that strong bishop and not lose a pawn. And after queen to e7, h3, rook f to c8, look at this. Black's rooks both have very nice files and a lot of activity. So that's a bit of extra for experts, and just taking that principle of rooks belong on open files in the middle game to another slightly more advanced level. Principle number 4, and this is my personal favorite. It's less of a principle and more of a key position that you need to know if you're serious about improving your chess. It is called the Lucena position. And the key thing about this one is there's a specific technique for white to win this, and I'll show you the technique here. But the key thing is white needs to get the king out of the way in order to make a queen. The black rook prevents white from escaping along the c-file, and the king prevents white escaping on the e-file. The key thing is, you play rook to f1, the king moves away. Now you can escape on e7, but you're just going to get checked with the rook on e2. So what you do first is you do this. It's called building a bridge. You put the rook on the 4th rank, and now whatever black plays, let's just say king to g6. You play king to e7, rook to e2 check. This is the technique. Check, king e6, check, check, boom. And now you've essentially allowed your pawn to become a queen, and you're going to win the game. That's a specific technique. I would definitely recommend you practice this over and over, because this is how powerful it is. Let's just say you're in a rook endgame like this position. It's black to move. Black thinks, okay, maybe I can make a draw by taking these kingside pawns. Maybe I can even play for a win if I can maintain mine. The problem is, it's very hard to calculate all of this unless you know the end goal, the end position you're trying to get to. So watch this. If black takes here, white's going to take on f4. And if black makes the mistake of taking on h2, white simply plays check, king f6, rook e4, and you can kind of see now we're starting to